Good evening and welcome to this Cabinet meeting by virtue of the Local Authorities Police and Crime Panels Regulations 2020. The requirement for public meetings to be made accessible to the public remains, and the link to the virtual meeting is available on the Council's website in the usual live meeting link page. If a connection to a member is lost during this meeting, I'll stop it to enable the connection to be restored. If the connection cannot be restored within a reasonable time, the meeting will proceed, but the member who was disconnected will not be able to vote on the matter under discussion as they would not have heard all of the debate. Should any aspect of the external link fail, I may call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes or so to determine whether the connection can be quickly re-established. If the connection is not restored within that time, the meeting will be adjourned and any further business will not proceed until another time and date. Firstly, can I ask Cabinet members to notify the meeting of their attendance? Councillor Shah.
Present.
Councillor Jabbar.
Present.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Present.
Councillor Chatterton.
Present.
Councillor Chowan.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Brownridge.
Present.
And Councillor Moores.
Present.
Thank you. That's everybody present because clearly I'm here as well. So I've not received any apologies for absence. Everybody's checked in. I've not been notified of any urgent business which would be considered under item 2. I'll now pause for a moment under item 3 to allow any members who have an interest to declare in the agenda to do so. I'll take silence to mean that there are no interests to declare. Public questions. I've not been notified that the Council has received any public questions for this meeting. Now, the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 25th of January 2021. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. There was no dissent there. I don't believe that we need to take a roll call vote on those, so those can be taken as agreed. Item 6, the GM Clean Air Plan consultation. Councillor Brownridge, over to you for this item.
Thank you very much. This is, as it says on the tin, a report on the consultation exercise for the clean air area and the common licensing standards. The crucial parts are that we have to have a formal plan in place by summer of this year, and that will need to define the funding streams. So the report details that there may be some matters to take account because of COVID. So, for example, some of the funding for clean vehicles may change because people will not be in a position to invest at the moment. There's more uncertainty about that. And the government hasn't yet confirmed any of the funding that we've requested.
Councillor Brownridge, I believe you've turned yourself on mute whilst you've been speaking.
Sorry, I was getting carried away there, sorry. As I say, the other element is that we need to set up a governance committee because the Transport for Greater Manchester isn't a body that's allowed to make decisions about funding and so forth. So there'll be a committee set up of the 10 authorities who have charging abilities in order to actually implement the changes. So the report, the draft plan will come out sometime towards the summer, and that will include comments on the common licensing scheme as well. So I think other than that, the report makes it clear what's been done, as good an exercise as possibly could be done in the circumstances. So hopefully nobody has any questions. I think it is fairly self-evident.
Thank you, Councillor Brownridge, for talking us through that report. Of course, it is a report on the consultation. So do any members have any comments or questions on this item? No. Thank you, everybody. The recommendations are before you. Can I now invite you to indicate whether you are in agreement or not? I'll go first. I agree to the recommendations as set out in the paper. Councillor Shah?
Agreed.
Councillor Jabbar?
Agreed.
Councillor Mushtaq?
Agreed.
Councillor Chatterton?
Agreed.
Councillor Chowan?
Agreed.
Councillor Roberts?
Agreed.
Councillor Brownridge?
I'll agree, yeah.
And Councillor Moores?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. OK, so we can move on to item 7, which is the Council's corporate performance report. So there are a few things that I would like to pick out from here. Firstly, that we are achieving target on 70% of measures in Q3 up until December. There's some information in there about absence and the way that that's been affected by the pandemic. The highest reason for sickness in the council was 1.59 days per full-time equivalent for musculoskeletal injuries, and that's fallen from 2.4 per full-time equivalent. The level of council spend in Oldham has increased, and we've achieved target on care leavers as well. There are a few areas for concern which are being monitored carefully, which members may wish to comment on, but the information on the council's performance measures are set out before you. Please also note that a number of the measures have been suspended due to COVID and are being monitored only rather than being measured against a particular target. But this is for council members to note and comment on, cabinet members, apologies. Do any members have any comments or questions on this report?
Chair,
No.
I'd like to make a comment. I can't find my hand raising function for some reason. But
We don't have it in live meeting, sadly, so you have to shout out.
Okay, sorry, but just to acknowledge, Chair, our workforce and the way in the way that they've worked over this last year, and so COVID doesn't discriminate, as we know, and most of our workforce have been affected by it themselves. But I've put that to the side just to support our residents and make sure that the services that we're able to deliver are still effective and reaching out the most vulnerable of our residents. And I'd just like to acknowledge and note my thanks to them.
Thanks, Councillor Shah. I can see nodding. I don't think the public can see people nodding, but we all are. And I think everybody agrees with those sentiments. It's an incredibly challenging time to be working in public services, and so the work that our staff are putting in, doing not just the usual jobs under different pressures, but different jobs too, is truly incredible. So did I see somebody else wave? Yes, Councillor, I knew you were waving. Councillor Brown.
I just want to be very parochial and just express my thanks to the library service, because you will see that the library service is actually smashing its targets despite not having been open for months, and we are still lending books and doing things, and that featured very highly in the consultation on the cultural strategy as well. The value of libraries was very highly reflected in that. So again, I echo Councillor Shah's remarks that the staff are doing a fantastic job providing a service that's welcomed in very, very trying circumstances. So I just wanted, a bit parochial, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, that's no problem at all. I mean, we could all play this, and I'd say that our finance and our regeneration team have been incredible in administering the business grants and getting them out to businesses and self-employed individuals incredibly quickly, despite what some people might say on the internet. Some people who themselves have actually had the grants quickly, which was a bizarre complaint to say that they're being administered slow when you've had 10k off the council yourself. But people say these things, but it's not representative, and I know that out there people are very appreciative of the response for the council, and I've had that when I've been speaking to people at the vaccination centre or during my conversations with electors ahead of the local elections, that there is genuine appreciation out there amongst the silent majority of Oldhamers for the incredible work that the council is doing. So with that, thank you. There's some work to be done on some of those performance measures, and I know that cabinet members will take them back to their individual briefings with officers to see that the ones that are red can be turned into greens or ambers next time round. So we look forward to receiving the future quarters performance report. I do need to take a roll call vote on agreeing to the recommendations as set out before you. So I agree to the recommendations myself. Now, Councillor Shah.
Agreed.
Councillor Jabbar.
Agreed.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Agreed.
Councillor Chatterton.
Agreed.
Councillor Chowan.
Agreed.
Councillor Roberts.
Agreed.
Councillor Brownridge.
Agreed.
And Councillor Moores.
Agreed.
Thank you, everybody. Moving on to item 8, we've got the Oldham Community Leisure Contract. We're going to have to take the vote in private on this because there is some information that can only be considered following the exclusion of the press and public. But Councillor Chowan, do you want to talk through and introduce the bits that you can do whilst we are still in public session?
Thank you, Councillor Fielding. So before I talk about the contract, I just wanted to use this opportunity to say thank you to the staff of OCL who played a crucial role during first epidemic of COVID and continue to do so among other council staff, starting from binmans to everyone else. So thank you, big thank you to them. So this purpose of this report is to present options for the future of the council leisure contract. And this report is recommending that council extends the contract of OCL, continues to provide the support to OCL to sustain themselves, as we know that OCL was badly affected like other leisure industries in Oldham and everywhere else in the country. This also paper recommends that we will bring back a report to the cabinet where this extension will allow us to negotiate over social value framework, which I can talk about more in details, but essentially all the objectives we want to achieve started from employment of people from learning disabilities, various other communities, and achieving our wider outcomes of this administration. So we want to include those into the new extension of contract, but we're proposing that we will bring back this paper. And we want to ensure that service meets the needs of the population of Oldham, and service providers also reflect the population they serve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chowan, for talking us through that. You are right to highlight our social value procurement framework, which sees that we let contracts to companies that don't just seek to make money, but deliver a service and also have a social mission. And I know that we're particularly proud of OCL Active and the way that they've supported us during the pandemic because of their values as an organisation. We may not have got the same commitment and same support for our communities had we done what other councils around the country have done and let our leisure service contract to a purely private profit-making provider. All the P's. Thank you. Right, we've got no vote to take on this because we need to do it in the private part of the meeting. So thank you to Councillor Chowan for talking us through that. But we will now move on to item 9, which is approval to award the liquid fuel contract. And I'm sure that Councillor Brownridge is going to make sure that the presentation is as exciting as that title sounds.
Sadly, I'm not. I'm going to say that really does say or do what it says on the tin, and I can think of nothing to add to it, I'm afraid.
Thanks, Councillor Brownridge. You tried, but are we happy with the recommendations set out in this report? I do believe we can vote on this one in this part of the meeting. Just a moment. Yes, we can. Right, so I agree to the recommendations around awarding the liquid fuel contract. Councillor Shah, do you?
Agreed.
Councillor Jabbar?
Agreed.
Councillor Mushtaq?
Agreed.
Councillor Chatterton?
Agreed.
Councillor Chowan?
Agreed.
Councillor Roberts?
Agreed.
Councillor Brownridge?
Agreed.
Councillor Moores?
Agreed.
Wonderful, thank you. Item 10, this is an equally as interesting sounding item for those at home watching. The liability insurance tender report. Councillor Jabbar.
I'll give it a go, Chair. So this is a really important report, Chair. It tries to give you this situation with renewing the insurance for the council, Unity and MyoCare. So what we've done is we carried out the usual value for money tender exercise, and what's been recommended in the this is a two-part report, so there's an open part and the second part. So the second part you get to know who we're recommending that gets the contract and the value of it, but the open part suggests, right, that we're looking for a 3-year contract with an option of extending it for a further 2 years. Obviously, in this current situation, insurance is really important. So our office has done a fantastic job in trying to get this paper ready. And hopefully when you see the closed part, you realize it's a good value for money as well, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. Not an interesting title or topic, but incredibly important. Public liability insurance is very important, and as a local community group in my area has had it impressed upon them for the activities that they wish to undertake, it is important that you are insured and protected if you are undertaking a role that leads you to come into contact with members of the public, which of course many of our day-to-day staff do. So this is a report that we need to consider more of under Part B, so we can't take a vote at the moment. I don't see anybody itching to come in following Councillor Jabbar's comments at this point, so we'll move on. Item 11, report to approve Fleet Factors Limited to manage the stores function for fleet management. Councillor Brownridge.
Again, this is very straightforward. They hold the current contract. The proposal is that we extend it for another 2-year period, and again, it seems very straightforward. I don't have anything more to add.
No, I don't think there's much to add to the title of the report, really. It's fairly self-explanatory. Does anybody have any questions or observations on this? No, again, as it's a contract award, there is more to consider in the private part of the meeting, so there is no vote to be taken at this point. Item 12, this is a Part A and a Part B again, where we will take the vote after the press and public have been excluded and a live link has been taken down. But I'm sure that Councillor Roberts has got something that she wishes to say about the Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery Scheme Phase 1B. Councillor Roberts, over to you.
Yes, indeed I do. Thank you, Chair. So this is good news for Oldham. It's partly a technical report, where we're signing a contract to the Greater Manchester Combined Authority to administer all of the Green Home grants across Greater Manchester. That's because we have a contract in place arising from our Warm Homes Oldham scheme, which enables us to act quickly and commission in the very short deadline that the government gave us. In addition, we previously have discussed and received a report around the wall insulation that we're doing on some of the homes that remain in the council's ownership. And this report adds to that some solar panels on the bungalows that we retain as well. So it's additional funding for additional work which will improve people's homes in Oldham and to allow us to administer the contract on behalf of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority across Greater Manchester. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Roberts. I can see Councillor Jabbar indicating on this, so I'll bring him in next. Councillor Jabbar.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report. I would like to thank Councillor Roberts and her officers for doing a fantastic job in delivering the funding on behalf of Greater Manchester. I think this report, Chair, again demonstrates Oldham is leading in this green agenda, as well as doing the retrofitting of the homes. We're actually installing solar panels that will produce clean electricity, much needed clean electricity for residents, so that's to be welcome as well. And I think, Chair, it demonstrates that despite having very short timetable to respond to funding, we're able to meet those challenges. And my appeal would be that government come forward, especially in the year where United Kingdom is hosting the United Nations Climate Change Conference in November, with some solid proposal to deal with decarbonisation. And if they did that, then I'm absolutely convinced Oldham Council will play its part in meeting those challenges. So I'd like to welcome it, and just to say that we're ready for anything that the government wants to invest in either in local government or in private sector. I mean, you know, you've heard the Prime Minister talk about green jobs and so on, but we'd be ready, Chair, that if the government gave us the money, we'd be ready to build a business park to invest in our community, create green jobs. But we need that initial investment to be able to make those things happen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. You know, I'd echo those sentiments around the call for investment. My home that I'm sat in at the moment, taking this meeting from, was built in the 1930s. It has had cavity wall insulation, but there are many similar homes that have not. Equally, there are other homes on my street that have solar panels, whilst mine, and the majority of others do not. There is a real opportunity for retrofitting of green technology at scale on the existing housing stock throughout the country. And whilst it's great that there's been some money to do this on some properties, as set out in this report, really if we want to build a green recovery, the government needs to do it in a significant way, and I hope that they will earmark some investment in this area in the budget when it comes out in a couple of weeks' time. We're setting an example with the resources that we have, with our bid for the mine water heat network, and with us being seen as the best option for delivery of this particular contract, not just in Oldham but right across Greater Manchester. But it needs to be delivered at a national level to get the kind of scale and change that we need to make an impact on carbon emissions from domestic properties and other sources. So there's no vote to be taken on this item. I can't see anybody else waving, so we'll stop and move on to item 13, which is the new Saddleworth School, award of the contract for the main highways work. Councillor Mushtaq, again, the vote will be taken in private.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Not much to be said here. As you say, it's the award of the contract for main highways works in relation to the new Saddleworth School, and because it is a contract decision, the vote will be taken in Part B of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mushtaq. Well, it's for the main highways work to provide access to Saddleworth School. If we don't build a road to it, we'll have a school that no children can get to, so it's fairly important that we do that. But we will take the vote on the contract award in the private part of the meeting, which is coming up next, because the next item on the agenda is the exclusion of the press and public. Can I ask a member to move and somebody else to second that, please?
Move, Chair.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Shah, second by Councillor Mushtaq, exclusion of the press and public. If anybody is watching at home, the live link will now go dead. Enjoy the rest of your evening.